Let's recap Grimm Season 4, Episode 9, called Wesenrein. Oh my goodness. Okay, so the hiatus is over. Time for the winter premiere. Juliet is a hexen beast. She decides to try to call Nick, but then she decides against it. She's breaking mirrors all around her room. She's losing control. And the worst part is that she doesn't know that she's in control of her own self, which is just causing her a lot of anxiety and a lot of nightmares, which we'll get to. So, Wu is in jail, and Nick and Hank bust him out to give him some answers. And at first he's very hesitant. They're going to the trailer, and he's like, "Well, are you gonna kill me?" And the entirety of Wu's explanation happens in the first 10 minutes of the episode, like before the theme song. He thinks he's crazy, and at first when they show him all the weird Wesen stuff, he's like, no, no, no. But then, as Nick explains it, like Hank, he felt relieved that he's not crazy. And, I mean, this whole thing really should have taken longer, but because of everything else that had to happen in this episode and the investigation that had to happen in an hour, it was like best for the plot that Wu's explanation only happened in the first part of the episode. And so he asked the right questions. He said, "Why did you lie to me?" And he definitely is not done with this. Like Hank took a few episodes to get caught up, so this is going to continue till next week and the week after. But he definitely said, "I'm not going anywhere. I can handle this." This episode, a lot of people complained because it really didn't go as far as we thought it would, but again, this is the first episode, and it's really just a vamp up for the episode following. Like, we can't have the problem solved in the first episode. That would be crazy. So in order to drag it out, we actually show step by step how the investigation goes, and it starts with Rosalie actually finding out what happens, and she goes outside, and Monroe's not there. She sees Officer Acker on the ground. Now, he was suspicious from the beginning. Like, I originally thought that he was the guy in the mask, and, well, at first he seems very innocent, like, oh, he got attacked, but he keeps showing up during the investigation. Like, they keep showing him being questioned and re-questioned, and then coming back to the precinct, so he's suspicious. Literally, they are taking this one step at a time, interrogating Rosalie and the officer, and it's really not necessary, but the writers are wanting to drag this out. So one benefit to this is that we get to explore the real reactions of the characters. Mainly, we get to see Bree Turner's acting, which is phenomenal. Another reason for taking this long is to get across how slow it takes going by the book, because this is Cop Nick, not Grimm Nick, which Rosalie says, albeit in a dream, he needs to be a Grimm. He needs to hunt them down and kill them before they kill Monroe, and she's pretty right. And we get this because this entire episode is just like, come on, get to him already. Monroe, he gets taken by these guys in the masks, and they're really creepy. They chant very creepily, Imboro, 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 Wesenrein, Wesenrein, So Monroe is getting bullied by the guard, who is this kid, and he gives him vodka instead of water, which, Monroe is a theater, so he doesn't like that hard alcohol. And it's also when you're really thirsty, you don't want alcohol. And so the guy is really, like, spitting at him. He's like, Blutbutton, don't lie with Fuchsbau. And then Monroe meets Terry, the guy in the, not really the cell next to him, but chained up next to him, and he is just terrified. And Terry is really there to induce the level of fear that the writers want us to, get. He leaves his wedding ring with Monroe, and then we see him getting dragged away screaming, no! And the guy's like, heartbreaking, isn't it? And we're like, yes! So meanwhile, the investigation is starting. Nick and Hank brief the captain on Snow and the Wesenrein, and Captain is already familiar with it. And Nick is in full defense mode, like he wants his friend back. And he's like, we need to go now, because the longer we go, the less likely we are to find him alive. And so they go get Shaw, who, if you remember, it was the Cloud Strike that Trouble originally tracked down and shook up because Bud thought that he was involved and going to hurt Nick. So meanwhile, the captain sends a Croc Wesen to go out looking for info on the Wesenrein, and he talks to Wu and lets him know that he is also in the know about all this stuff. He does not go into detail about him yet. We're not there yet. That'll come later. So Nick interrogates Shaw, and he's pretty scary. He acts like a Grimm. A really funny line was when he asks about Monroe, and Shaw's like, Monroe, is that his first name or last? The writers have been playing that joke a lot. It's pretty funny. So Nick is like smacking him around, and he's actually gonna kill him. His face gets all gray, like zombie Nick. And the captain suggests that they let him go and then see where he leads them. So they bring in the newfound member of the Scooby Gang, Officer Wu, and they brief him on the Wesenrein and say that Wu is gonna watch his house. However, they are watching his house also, and so they warn Shaw, tell him to go out the back. And then he gets killed by the Grand Master of the Wesenrein, who is a Blutbad, because they don't want Shaw leaking anything to the cops. So they go in and search his house, and they find a Wesenrein robe with the wolf's angle on it, and they find a picture which has Officer Acker in it. Finally, we are on to him, because he's the one who told the Wesenrein that Wu was going to watch their house. Meanwhile, Rosalie has been taken to Juliet's house, and she can't sleep or eat or breathe. She has a great line about how the rest of their lives they were going to be known as Monroe and Rosalie. Not just Monroe, not just Rosalie, but Monroe and Rosalie. I'm surprised they didn't just say Monrosalie, because that's what we know them as. And so she's like, I can't lose him now. Again, Bree Turner acting spot on. It's great to see her face because you can tell that she's been crying, and she's wearing literally no makeup, so you know that this is like raw. So then, if you watched one of the sneak peeks that NBC released, it was called Rosalie's Rage, where she yelled at Juliet to get Nick on the phone and do whatever it takes to find Monroe. Her rage is actually pretty justified. However, Juliet then vogues and attacks her. They fight all vogued up, and then she rips out her throat. And yeah, it's a dream. It's not real. But up until she kills Rosalie, you totally thought it was real. It was a crazy fake out. Again, we are backing up Juliet's fear about not being in control, and that's all that is. That's all that scene is. And Rosalie, luckily, actually falls asleep, but then when she wakes up, she just needs to do something. It's at that point that Juliet doesn't want her to go crazy, and so she gives her the list of the names that Trouble had, and that kind of gives them a little inspiration as to something that they can do instead of just sitting there. Meanwhile, being captive, Monroe pulls the old bathroom scam, and he's like, I need to use the bathroom, and then whips this insecure kid with chains, and then he runs for it. He hurt himself, so he's half limping through the woods, trying to find a way out. And then he runs across Terry, who has been skewered and burned through the stake. It's crazy scary. I can't even show you a picture of it. It's so grotesque. But that is really the thing that induced the fear in us, that this is serious. So we know that Monroe's not actually going to die because Silas Weir Mitchell is one of the main cast members, but still, now we know that this is serious and scary. And Monroe is just like, you filth, how could you do that? So also during these scenes in their headquarters, warehouse, wherever they are, we get to know the hierarchy of the Wesenrein. So the big bro is the Grand Master, and his little brother Jonah was the guard. And so the tribunal is the one who decides the fate. And they are taking these impure Wesen, or impuro, and they have to answer for their sins. And they are dead serious. By the end, it's wow, this is way too much like Nazi Germany and eugenics. So the detectives are hard at work. They find Acker's prison pal, which leads them to his roommate, who is actually the Grand Master, and his name is Charlie Rackett. And they go to his house, they find a phone, so they have some kind of lead, but still they are running out of time. Also, we got one scene with Adeline and Prince Victor in Vienna, and they're saying that they want to go to Portland because the people who are connected to her child are in Portland, so that would be step one in getting her back. But the episode ends with them all in their robes and they're chanting Wesenrein. Monroe is gonna be sentenced to death. Let the tribunal begin.